What if you could build an entire barn strong enough to last hundreds of years without a single power tool or hired contractor? The Amish do it in just one day, using nothing but hand tools, muscle, and a system so efficient it puts modern builders to shame. This isn't just a construction method, it's a masterclass in teamwork, planning, and simplicity that will change how you think about getting big things done. Trees don't grow overnight, and the Amish know this better than anyone. When it comes to building a barn that will stand for generations, they start with the foundation of all construction, the wood itself. But this isn't a quick trip to the local lumber yard with a pickup truck and a credit card. The Amish approach timber selection like a master chef, choosing ingredients for a prize-winning recipe. They walk through their woodlots, examining trees that have been growing for decades, sometimes even longer than the person doing the selecting has been alive. Oak trees are the gold standard, strong, durable, and stubborn enough to outlast 3 generations of farmers. Maple comes in a close second with its tight grain and reliable strength that won't let you down when you're storing thousands of pounds of hay overhead. Pine makes the list too, especially for areas where weight matters more than raw strength. Each tree gets inspected like a used car at a dealership, except instead of checking the mileage, they're looking for straight grain, minimal knots, and signs of disease or rot. A tree with heart rot might look fine from the outside, but cut it open and you'll find wood that's about as useful as a chocolate teapot. An old carpenter once said choosing the right tree is like picking a good neighbor. You want one that's been standing strong through every storm, won't cause you headaches, and will still be there when you need them most. The actual cutting happens with a combination of hand tools and belt-powered equipment. No electric chainsaws buzzing through the forest here. Instead, you'll see cross-cut saws working their way through massive trunks with 2-person teams working in rhythm that would make a rowing crew jealous. The belt-powered sawmills are marvels of engineering simplicity. Powered by diesel engines, or sometimes even horses, they can turn a raw log into perfectly dimensioned lumber without plugging into the electrical grid. Once the logs are cut, they head to the sawmill where they get transformed from round logs into square beams, flat boards, and everything in between. The sawmill operator has an eye for grain direction and knows exactly how to cut each log to get the maximum strength from every piece. Waste isn't just avoided, it's practically eliminated. What can't be used for structural lumber becomes siding. What can't be used for siding becomes kindling. But here's where patience becomes more important than power tools. Fresh-cut lumber is like green fruit. It might look ready, but it's not. The wood needs time to dry and cure, releasing moisture slowly and naturally. Stack it wrong and you'll end up with warped boards that twist like pretzels. Rush the process and you'll have lumber that shrinks and cracks after your barn is already built. The drying process can take months with lumber stacked in careful patterns that allow air to flow between each board. Stickers, thin strips of wood, separate each layer, creating airways that let moisture escape evenly. The whole pile gets covered to protect it from rain while still allowing air circulation. It's like a giant wooden sandwich that needs to breathe. Temperature and humidity get monitored the old-fashioned way, by experience and feel. A skilled carpenter can tell you the moisture content of a board just by lifting it and listening to the sound it makes when tapped. When the wood is finally ready, it has reached that perfect balance of strength and stability that will serve the barn well for decades to come. Before a single beam gets cut or a hole gets dug, the real work begins around a kitchen table covered in hand-drawn blueprints and coffee stains. Planning an Amish barn isn't like scrolling through Pinterest for inspiration or calling up an architect with a fancy computer program. Everything starts with pencil and paper, generations of experience, and conversations that can stretch late into the evening. The master builder sits down with the farm family to figure out exactly what kind of barn they need. Will it house dairy cows or beef cattle? How many animals need shelter? Do they need space for hay storage above the animals, or will feed be stored elsewhere? These questions matter because a dairy barn requires different ventilation than a horse barn, and a barn meant for storing equipment needs completely different interior spacing than one designed for livestock. Size gets determined by practical needs rather than what looks impressive. A typical Amish barn might measure 30 by 40 feet for a smaller operation, or stretch to 40 by 60 feet for larger farms. But these dimensions aren't random numbers. They're based on efficient use of standard lumber lengths and the physical limitations of what a community can reasonably raise in a single day. You can't just decide you want a barn the size of a football field and expect your neighbors to show up with enough muscle power to make it happen. Planning a barn is like planning a family reunion. Everyone has an opinion about how much space you need, but nobody wants to volunteer for the cleanup afterward. The layout gets sketched out with careful attention to workflow. Cows need to move easily from their stalls to milking areas. Hay needs to drop down from the loft without creating bottlenecks. Feed rooms need to be accessible but protected from moisture. Every door, every window, every interior wall gets planned with decades of farming experience guiding the decisions. Ventilation planning might seem boring, but it can make or break a barn. Too little airflow, and you'll have condensation problems that rot wood and make animals sick. Too much ventilation, and you'll lose all your heat in winter. The Amish have perfected a system of ridge vents, cupolas, and strategically placed openings that keep air moving without creating drafts. The only product we'll ever promote on our channel is a book by Claude Davis, a veteran prepper, about 126 superfoods and preservation methods from crisis times like the Great Depression and wartime that are impossible to find elsewhere. We decided to promote his book because we are the last generation able to share these techniques and superfoods to our children or grandchildren. It would be a shame to see this information about highly nutritious foods and preservation methods to survive crises disappear. You can also find a book about herbal remedies from Nicole Apelian on their store. If you're watching this on TV, you can look up our channel, Frugal Solutions, on your phone or tablet and find the books by clicking the link in our channel description or any other video description. The structural engineering happens without computers or calculators, but it's no less precise. Master builders know exactly how far apart floor joists need to be spaced to support the weight of a full hayloft. They calculate load-bearing requirements based on snow loads, wind resistance, and the simple fact that barns need to last for generations. Mortise and tenon joints get planned down to the quarter inch. Every beam that connects to another beam needs precisely cut joints that fit together like puzzle pieces. When wood expands and contracts with temperature changes, these joints actually get tighter rather than looser. Team assignments get worked out based on skill levels and physical capabilities. The most experienced carpenters handle the precision work of cutting joints and fitting beams. Younger men with strong backs get assigned to the heavy lifting crews. Everyone has a specific role, and the planning phase eliminates confusion when dozens of people show up ready to work. Chaos has no place in an Amish barn raising, which is why every single piece of wood gets cut, shaped, and labeled long before the community shows up to work. This preparation phase separates successful barn raisings from disasters that leave everyone standing around scratching their heads and wondering why nothing fits together properly. The cutting begins weeks ahead of the actual raising day. Each beam, post, brace, floor joist, and rafter gets measured twice and cut once, following the old carpenter's rule that saves both time and lumber. But this isn't just about getting the right lengths. Every piece needs to be shaped for its specific job in the barn structure. A corner post requires different cuts than a center post, and a rafter for the north side might need slightly different angles than one for the south side. Hand tools do most of the heavy lifting here. Draw knives shave rough lumber smooth, adzes hollow out curved sections, and chisels carve the intricate joints that will hold the entire structure together. The most skilled craftsmen handle the joinery work because a mortise that's even slightly off can throw an entire wall section out of square. Cutting wood joints is like a good marriage. If it doesn't fit together perfectly from the start, no amount of hammering is going to make it work later. Mortise and tenon joints require the most attention to detail. The mortise is the hole carved into one piece of wood with chisels and mallets. The tenon is the protruding piece that fits into that hole, shaped on the end of another beam. When done correctly, these joints create connections stronger than the wood itself. Getting them wrong means starting over with new lumber, which nobody wants to explain to the community. Wooden pegs, called trunnels, get carved by hand from seasoned hardwood. These aren't just simple dowels, they're slightly tapered so they drive tight and hold fast. Each peg gets inspected for grain direction, knots, and any defects that might cause it to split under pressure. A single barn might need hundreds of these pegs, and everyone needs to be perfect. The labeling system would make a modern warehouse manager jealous. Each piece gets marked with chalk or pencil to show exactly where it belongs in the final structure. Wall sections get numbered, rafters get marked for their position along the roof line, and braces get coded to show which joints they connect. This prevents the nightmare scenario of having the right piece in the wrong place when dozens of people are trying to work together efficiently. Organization at the work site follows military precision. Materials get sorted into logical groups and stacked where they'll be needed most. Wall framing lumber goes near where the walls will be assembled. Roof materials get placed close to where they'll be lifted into position. Everything has its place, and everything stays in its place until needed. The stacking itself requires skill and planning. Heavy timbers go on the bottom, lighter pieces on top. Spacers keep lumber from direct ground contact and allow air circulation to prevent rot. Each stack gets built so pieces can be removed in the order they'll be needed. Quality control happens at every step. Experienced craftsmen inspect each cut, check every joint, and test fit critical connections before the big day arrives. Any piece that doesn't meet standards gets reworked or replaced immediately. There's no time for fixing mistakes when the entire community is standing around waiting for work to continue. By the time preparation is complete, the barn exists in pieces, ready to be assembled like the world's largest and most complex puzzle. Dawn breaks across the countryside, and something magical starts happening at the barn site. Buggies begin arriving from every direction, each one carrying men with their personal toolboxes and enough determination to build something that will outlast them all. This isn't just construction work, it's a community event that brings together skills passed down through generations. Each worker arrives carrying his own collection of hand tools, worn smooth from years of use. Wooden mallets, sharp chisels, hand saws, and measuring squares all make the journey from home workshops to the building site. These aren't just tools borrowed from a neighbor or picked up at the hardware store last week. Many of these implements belong to fathers and grandfathers, carrying the scratches and stains that tell stories of countless building projects. The organization happens without lengthy meetings or complicated charts. Men naturally sort themselves into groups based on their skills and experience. The master carpenters head straight to the most complex joinery work, while the strongest backs gravitate toward the heavy lifting teams. Younger men fresh out of school often find themselves handling materials and learning by watching, absorbing techniques that no classroom could ever teach. Organizing an Amish work crew is like a family dinner. Everyone knows where they belong, but someone always ends up doing twice the work they expected. Communication flows through hand signals, short calls, and decades of working together on similar projects. When someone needs help lifting a beam, a simple nod brings 3 more pairs of hands. When a measurement needs checking, the nearest person with a square steps in without being asked. This coordination develops naturally in communities where barn raisings happen regularly and everyone knows their neighbor's strengths. Safety becomes everyone's responsibility, even without hard hats or safety meetings. Experienced workers keep eyes on newer team members, offering guidance before mistakes happen. Tool sharing follows unspoken rules. You return borrowed tools cleaner than you found them, and you never walk away with someone else's favorite chisel. Sharp tools stay sharp, work areas stay clear of debris, and heavy lifting always involves enough people to do the job safely. The pace starts steady and builds throughout the morning. Teams work in parallel, with wall sections taking shape on the ground while foundation preparations continue. The rhythm develops naturally as groups find their stride and settle into the work. There's no rushing, but there's also no wasted motion. Every action serves a purpose, and every person contributes to the larger goal. Weather conditions get assessed constantly, with experienced eyes watching clouds and feeling wind direction. A sudden rainstorm can halt progress, but light winds actually help when it comes time to raise heavy wall sections. Temperature matters too. Wood expands and contracts with heat, affecting how tightly joints fit together. As morning progresses, the site transforms from organized chaos into a well-oiled machine. Each team knows exactly what needs to happen next, and the coordination between groups becomes seamless. The foundation of successful barn raising isn't just good lumber and solid joints, it's people who trust each other and work together toward a common goal. With the teams organized and tools ready, attention turns to the most critical phase where all this preparation finally transforms into something you can actually see rising from the ground. The ground becomes a giant assembly floor where Amish wall sections come together like pieces of a massive wooden puzzle. Teams spread out across the work area, each group claiming their section of dirt where they'll build complete wall frames before the dramatic moment of lifting them into place. This horizontal assembly method lets Amish craftsmen work at comfortable heights while ensuring perfect joints and proper alignment. Wall construction starts with the biggest pieces first. Sill plates form the bottom foundation of each wall, followed by corner posts that will bear the weight of the entire structure. Each timber has been pre-cut and labeled, but Amish builders double-check measurements as routine. A mistake caught now takes minutes to fix, while the same error discovered after the wall is vertical might require tearing apart hours of work. Mortise and tenon joints get their final test as beams slide together for the first time since leaving the Amish workshop. The satisfaction of a perfect fit never gets old. When a tenon slides into its mortise with just the right amount of resistance, experienced Amish carpenters nod with approval. Too loose and the joint lacks strength, too tight and the wood might split under pressure. Assembly requires coordination between multiple Amish craftsmen working on the same wall section. One person holds the vertical post steady while another guides the horizontal beam into position. A third worker aligns the joint and checks for square, while a fourth prepares the wooden peg that will lock everything together permanently. The moment of truth arrives when dozens of Amish men gather around each completed wall section. Lifting a fully assembled wall frame requires precise timing and communication that would make a military drill sergeant proud. The heaviest walls might weigh over 1,000 pounds, distributed across 20 or 30 feet of length. No single person can lift more than their share, and everyone must move together. Commands ring out across the Amish worksite as crews prepare for synchronized lifting. Everyone grabs their assigned position along the wall frame, with the strongest workers positioned at the heaviest points. The count begins slowly, giving everyone time to get a solid grip and find their footing on potentially uneven ground. Lifting an Amish barn wall is like getting the whole family to agree on where to go for vacation. It takes perfect timing, clear communication, and someone has to be in charge or nothing gets off the ground. The actual lift happens in stages rather than one dramatic heave. First, the wall rises to knee height, then waist high, then shoulder level. At each stage, Amish workers adjust their grips and reset their positions. The final push to vertical requires the most coordination, as the wall's center of gravity shifts and the leverage changes dramatically. Once vertical, each wall gets immediate attention from the Amish bracing crew. Temporary diagonal supports keep the wall from falling back down or tipping sideways. These braces stay in place until permanent connections tie the walls together into a stable structure. A wall standing alone is impressive but vulnerable. It needs its neighbors to achieve real stability. Wooden pegs get driven into joints while the walls stand fresh and straight. Amish mallets ring out across the worksite as dozens of connections get locked permanently. Each peg must be driven firmly, but not so hard that it splits the surrounding wood. With walls rising skyward and braces holding everything steady, the Amish barn skeleton finally emerges from months of planning and preparation. But standing walls are just the beginning. They need to be tied together with the framework that will support everything above. 4 Amish walls standing alone don't make a barn any more than 4 wheels make a car. The real strength comes from connecting everything together with horizontal beams called girts that turn separate Amish walls into a unified structure. These connections transform what looks like a wooden fence into something that can withstand decades of weather, heavy loads, and the daily stress of Amish farm life. Girts run horizontally between the vertical posts, creating a grid pattern that distributes weight evenly across the entire Amish frame. Amish builders space these beams according to calculations passed down through generations, with each girt positioned to handle specific loads. The bottom girts tie the Amish walls together at ground level, while upper girts prepare for the weight of roof beams and whatever gets stored in the Amish loft above. Installation requires the same precision used for the Amish wall raising, but now the crews work at height instead of ground level. Wooden ladders and temporary scaffolds get built on site using the same Amish techniques that will construct the barn itself. Safety comes from Amish experience and careful movement rather than modern equipment. An Amish carpenter learns to trust his footing and maintain 3 points of contact at all times. Each girt beam gets lifted into position using ropes and coordinated Amish effort. The mortise and tenon joints that connect girts to posts require perfect alignment, which becomes more challenging when Amish workers operate 8 or 10 feet off the ground. Amish craftsmen develop an eye for angles and distances that comes from years of practice. Floor joists follow the girts, creating the framework for a second story or Amish hayloft. These beams run parallel to each other, typically spaced 16 inches apart to provide adequate support for whatever will be stored above. The spacing is based on the load-bearing capacity of the wood species being used and the expected weight of hay, grain, or equipment. Installing floor joists is like arranging the slats on a bed frame. Get the spacing wrong, and everything above is going to sag in all the wrong places. Amish builders use traditional measuring techniques to ensure consistent spacing. A master Amish carpenter will cut a measuring stick to the exact joist spacing, then use it to mark positions across the entire span. This simple Amish tool eliminates the accumulation of small errors that could throw the entire floor system out of alignment. The joists themselves get notched where they rest on supporting beams, creating a connection that prevents them from rolling or shifting under load. These notches get cut by hand with Amish saws and chisels, requiring skill to make them deep enough for stability, but not so deep that they weaken the joist itself. Wooden scaffolding gets built and rebuilt as Amish work progresses higher up the structure. Amish carpenters construct these temporary platforms using the same post and beam techniques they're using for the barn itself. Plumb lines and levels become essential Amish tools as the structure grows more complex. Amish builders check alignment constantly, making small adjustments before problems compound. With the horizontal framework complete, the Amish barn has developed its fundamental strength and is ready for the most visible part of the construction process. Roof construction separates the truly skilled Amish carpenters from everyone else. While walls and floor joists follow straightforward patterns, rafters require complex angle cuts and precise measurements that challenge even experienced builders. Every rafter must be cut to exactly the right length with perfectly angled ends, or the entire roof will look crooked and leak like a sieve. The ridge beam goes up first, running the full length of the Amish barn at the very peak of the roof. This massive timber needs to be perfectly straight and level, because every other piece of the roof system depends on it for alignment. Getting a 40-foot ridge beam into position 20 feet off the ground requires planning that would impress a military logistics officer. Amish crews use a combination of ropes, pulleys, and coordinated lifting to hoist the ridge beam into place. The beam gets lifted in stages, with temporary supports holding it at each level while workers adjust their positions and reset their equipment. Multiple teams work simultaneously, some controlling the ropes, others guiding the beam into position, and still others preparing the supports that will hold everything in place. Individual rafters get cut on the ground using traditional hand tools and techniques passed down through generations. Each rafter requires 2 precise angle cuts, one where it meets the ridge beam at the top and another where it sits on the wall plate at the bottom. These angles must be calculated based on the desired roof pitch, which affects everything from water drainage to interior space. Cutting roof rafters is like hemming pants for the whole family. Measure twice, cut once, and pray they all turn out the same length. The Amish roof pitch typically ranges from 8 in 12 to 12 in 12, meaning the roof rises 8 to 12 inches for every 12 inches of horizontal distance. Steeper pitches shed rain and snow more effectively but require more lumber and create more wind resistance. Shallower pitches use less material but might not drain properly in heavy weather. Rafter installation follows a systematic pattern across the Amish roof. Teams start at one end and work methodically toward the other, ensuring each rafter is properly seated and secured before moving to the next one. The spacing between rafters matters for structural strength. Too far apart and the roof sheathing might sag, too close together and you're wasting expensive lumber. King posts and queen posts provide additional support for longer spans where a simple rafter system might not be strong enough. These vertical supports run from the ridge beam down to the floor joists, transferring roof loads directly to the foundation rather than relying entirely on the wall structure. The Amish use these traditional truss designs that have proven themselves over centuries of use. Purlins run horizontally across the rafters, providing additional support and creating attachment points for the roof sheathing that will eventually cover everything. These lighter timbers get spaced according to the type of roofing material planned. Closer spacing for heavy materials like slate, wider spacing for lighter options like metal roofing. Each connection gets secured with wooden pegs or traditional nails, depending on the specific joint and the loads it needs to carry. The Amish builders work methodically across the entire roof system, checking alignment and making adjustments as they progress. A roof that's even slightly out of square will cause problems that become more obvious and harder to fix as construction continues. Weather becomes a critical factor during roof construction as Amish crews work completely exposed to the elements while balancing on narrow timbers high above the ground. Diagonal bracing transforms an Amish barn frame from something that might wobble in a strong wind into a structure that can withstand decades of harsh weather. These angled supports work like the guy wires on a radio tower, preventing the entire building from racking sideways when storms hit or heavy equipment moves around inside. The Amish install braces at critical stress points throughout the structure, particularly at corners where walls meet and where the roof system connects to the walls. Each brace gets cut to fit precisely between two structural members, creating a triangle that can't be deformed without breaking the wood itself. This triangulation principle has been used in construction for thousands of years because it simply works. Brace installation requires careful measurement and cutting, as each piece must fit exactly between specific points on the frame. Too short, and the brace provides no support. Too long, and it won't fit at all. Amish carpenters use traditional geometry to calculate the exact length needed, measuring the distances and using basic math that would make high school students proud. Corner bracing gets special attention because these joints experience the most stress during windstorms, and when heavy doors get slammed repeatedly over the years, the Amish cut these braces with precision joints that lock into both the vertical posts and horizontal girts, creating connections that actually get stronger as the wood ages and the joints tighten. Installing diagonal braces is like adding suspenders to a belt. It might seem like overkill until the first big storm proves you made the right choice. Exterior siding follows the bracing work, giving the Amish barn its final appearance while protecting the frame from weather. Board and batten siding remains the traditional choice, with wide vertical boards covering the wall surface and narrow strips covering the gaps between boards. This system sheds water effectively while allowing the wood to expand and contract with temperature changes. The Amish cut siding boards from the same local lumber used for the frame, ensuring consistent color and grain patterns across the entire structure. Each board gets measured and cut to length with careful attention to how the pieces will line up around doors, windows, and other openings. Proper planning prevents waste and ensures a professional appearance. Siding installation starts at one corner and works systematically around the entire Amish building. The first board must be perfectly plumb because every subsequent board will follow its alignment. Amish carpenters check their work constantly, making small adjustments before errors accumulate into major problems. Ventilation gaps get incorporated into the siding design, allowing air circulation while keeping weather out. These openings follow traditional patterns that have been refined over generations of Amish barn building. Too much ventilation creates drafts that make animals uncomfortable, while too little causes condensation problems that rot wood and create unhealthy conditions. Loft doors and hay drops get framed during the siding process, creating openings that will be essential for the barn's daily operation. These large openings require additional framing to support the loads that will pass through them when hay gets moved in and out of storage. The Amish size these openings based on the equipment and methods they'll use for handling crops and feed. Door and window frames get built using the same mortise and tenon joinery used throughout the rest of the Amish structure. These openings must be perfectly square and properly sized because the doors and windows that fill them will be custom built to fit exactly. With the structural work complete and siding protecting the frame, the Amish barn finally looks like the finished building it's destined to become. By late afternoon, the main Amish barn raising team has accomplished something remarkable. A complete structure stands where nothing existed that morning. The dramatic work of lifting walls and installing major beams draws to a close, but plenty of finishing tasks remain before this building becomes a fully functional barn. Tool cleanup happens with the same efficiency that marked the entire Amish construction process. Each worker collects his personal tools and checks them for damage from the day's hard use. Borrowed tools get returned to their owners, often in better condition than when they were loaned out. Sharp edges get protected, wooden handles get wiped clean, and everything returns to toolboxes that will travel home in the same buggies that brought them. Leftover materials don't go to waste in Amish construction. Useful lumber gets sorted and stacked for future projects, while wood scraps find new life as kindling or get incorporated into smaller building projects around the community. The Amish waste nothing that might serve a purpose later, and even sawdust often ends up as bedding for livestock or compost for gardens. Scaffolding comes down in reverse order of how it went up, with each piece carefully lowered and stacked for reuse at the next barn raising. These temporary structures represent significant labor to build, and Amish communities maintain shared supplies of scaffolding lumber that travels from project to project throughout the building season. An experienced carpenter can tell how good a crew is by watching them clean up. The best builders leave a site tidier than they found it. The main construction crew begins to disperse as daylight fades, but a smaller group of specialized craftsmen remains to handle the detail work that will continue over the following days and weeks. These finishing tasks require different skills than the heavy construction work: precision carpentry, custom fitting, and attention to details that might not be structural but are essential for the barn's daily operation. Quality inspection happens throughout the cleanup process, with experienced Amish builders checking joints, testing the stability of connections, and identifying any issues that need attention before the structure gets put into service. Problems discovered now are much easier to fix than ones found after the barn gets filled with hay, animals, and equipment. Weather protection becomes important as the structure transitions from construction site to working building. While the roof provides overhead protection, openings for doors and windows need temporary covers to keep rain and snow from damaging interior surfaces or creating ice hazards on wooden floors. The Amish community celebration that often follows a successful barn raising serves multiple purposes beyond just sharing a meal. These gatherings allow builders to discuss what went well, what could be improved, and lessons that might apply to future projects. Knowledge gets passed down through stories and conversations that happen naturally around tables full of food. Work assignments for the finishing phase get organized during these evening discussions, with volunteers signing up for specific tasks based on their skills and availability. Interior work proceeds at a more relaxed pace than the intense single-day frame raising, allowing for careful craftsmanship and attention to details that will make the barn both functional and beautiful. The Amish barn stands complete in its basic structure, ready for the detailed work that will transform it from an impressive frame into a working agricultural building. Interior partitions transform the empty Amish barn shell into a functional workspace divided for specific purposes. Animal stalls, feed rooms, tack storage, and equipment areas all require different layouts and construction techniques. Unlike the massive timber framing used for the main structure, interior work relies on lighter lumber and more detailed carpentry that showcases traditional Amish craftsmanship. Stall construction follows patterns developed over generations of Amish farming experience. Each stall gets sized for the specific animals it will house. Dairy cows need more room than beef cattle, and horses require different configurations than either type of cattle. Standard Amish cow stalls measure about 4 feet wide and 8 feet deep, providing enough space for the animal to lie down comfortably while keeping them positioned properly for milking. The Amish build stall dividers using heavy planks or boards that can withstand the daily abuse of large animals pushing against them. These partitions get anchored securely to the floor and tied into the main barn frame to prevent movement. Gates and latches receive special attention since they'll be opened and closed multiple times every day for years to come. Feed room construction requires different considerations than animal housing. These spaces need protection from moisture and rodents while providing easy access for daily feeding operations. Amish builders often elevate feed storage areas slightly above ground level and include features that make it easier to move heavy bags of grain or buckets of feed. Building barn stalls requires the patience of a saint and the strength of an ox, mostly because the animals will test both qualities every single day. Floor preparation varies depending on the intended use of each area. Cow stalls often use packed dirt floors covered with bedding, while feed rooms might get wooden floors to keep supplies dry and clean. The Amish level these surfaces carefully, ensuring proper drainage while avoiding low spots where water might collect. Hayloft finishing involves more than just creating a storage space above the animals. These areas need strong floors to support enormous weights. A typical Amish barn loft might hold 20 to 30 tons of hay during peak storage periods. Floorboards get nailed securely to the joists, with gaps between boards minimized to prevent hay from falling through onto the animals below. Loft access gets built with safety and convenience in mind. Amish carpenters construct sturdy ladders or stairs that can handle workers carrying armloads of hay or tools. Handrails and proper lighting become important features that make daily barn work safer and more efficient. Ventilation systems get completed during the interior finishing phase with adjustable openings that allow farmers to control airflow based on weather conditions and animal needs. The Amish understand that proper ventilation prevents moisture buildup that can rot wood and create unhealthy conditions for both animals and stored feed. Door installation requires precise measurements and skilled carpentry, as barn doors must be large enough for equipment while remaining easy to operate daily. Traditional Amish barn doors often slide on tracks rather than swinging open, saving space while providing wide openings for moving hay wagons or farm equipment. Hand-forged hardware adds both functionality and traditional appeal to the finished Amish barn. Hinges, latches, and door tracks get made by local blacksmiths using techniques passed down through generations. This hardware doesn't just look authentic, it's built to withstand decades of heavy use in demanding agricultural conditions. Windows get fitted with care to provide natural light while maintaining the barn's weather resistance. The Amish position these openings to illuminate work areas and provide ventilation options without creating drafts that might make animals uncomfortable. With interior work nearing completion, the Amish barn approaches its transformation from construction project to working agricultural facility. From timber selection to the final wooden pegs, Amish barn raising proves that the strongest structures aren't built by machines. They're built by communities working together. In a world obsessed with speed, these barns stand as monuments to patience, skill, and the power of neighbors helping neighbors.